The smell arrived 3 days before he did. Incense and something underneath it, formaldehyde perhaps, or the particular staleness that clings to very old parchment kept in very cold rooms. We did not know what it meant then. I was a senior data curator in the administrative archives of Hive Secundus, 17 years into my posting, proud of my efficiency ratings, and I had never once filed a report late. The smell pooled in the ventilation shafts and we worked through it, coughing politely into our sleeves, until the morning Proctor Velish did not arrive for the shift rotation and the smell grew thick enough to taste. They found Velish in Sub-Archive Theta, where we kept the agricultural tithe discrepancies from the southern continent. He had opened his own throat with a filing stylus. The clean-up servitors left rust-colored smears on the floor tiles that would not come out no matter how many times the maintenance crew scrubbed. I remember thinking, in the empty way you think things when your mind refuses the reality before you, that Velish had always been meticulous. Even in death, he had managed not to bleed on any of the documents. His blood had pooled between the stacks, as if he understood that the purity of the records mattered more than the purity of his own body. We were not permitted to attend a funeral. We were told to resume our duties. I resumed my duties. I had 6 centuries of water reclamation audits to cross-reference, and the sector governor's staff had requested a confirmation of barley yields from the northwestern provinces for the past fiscal decade. I was very good at my work. I took pride in this. I told myself that Velish had always been weak-spirited, prone to melancholy, unsuited for the righteous tedium of service. I told myself this while the smell grew worse. On the 4th day the Inquisitor arrived. I did not see him at first. No one did. He was simply there, the way a shadow is there when the light shifts, and you cannot say precisely when it appeared. The first I knew of his presence was the silence. Our archive hall held 234 data curators, scribes, junior notators, and file loaders. On an ordinary day, the sound of our labor was a low hum, styluses scratching, pages turning, the soft shuffle of feet on stone, the occasional cough or murmured query. When the Inquisitor arrived, the sound stopped. Not gradually, all at once, as if someone had cut the throat of the room itself. I looked up from my desk. He stood in the center of the hall between the rows of workstations, and everyone had turned to face him without realizing they had done so. He was not a large man. He wore a long coat of dark leather, unadorned except for a single sigil on his chest, a skull bisected by a stylized letter I had seen only in the most restricted sections of our iconography database. His face was pale and narrow, the kind of face that might have been handsome once, before something had hollowed it out from within. His eyes were the color of dirty ice. He did not introduce himself. He did not need to. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried the way a scalpel carries, sharp, precise, capable of opening you before you understood you had been cut. "I am conducting an inquiry," he said. "You will continue your work. You will not speak of this inquiry. You will not speculate. You will answer my questions when I ask them, and you will tell me the truth. If you lie, I will know. If you obstruct, I will know. If you are complicit, I will know." He paused. The silence stretched. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. 14 of you are guilty," he said. "I will find them. The rest of you will be spared. Resume your duties." We resumed our duties. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together beneath my desk until the tremor subsided. I did not know what we were guilty of. I did not know what inquiry he was conducting. I knew only that I had done nothing wrong, that my records were immaculate, that I had served faithfully for 17 years, and that none of this would matter if he decided otherwise. The Inquisitor moved through the archive like a plague wind. He did not interrogate us in any formal sense. He simply appeared at your shoulder or across your desk or in the corridor as you returned from the lavatory, and he asked you a question. The questions were never the ones you expected. He asked Junior Notator Kellis what her mother's name had been. He asked File Loader Jorth whether he had ever stolen food from the communal dispensary. He asked me, on the second day of his presence, whether I had ever doubted the righteousness of the Imperium. I said no. I said it immediately, without hesitation, because it was the truth. I had never doubted. Doubt was inefficiency. Doubt was weakness. Doubt was the rust that corroded the great machine of service, and I had devoted my life to keeping that machine running smoothly. The Inquisitor looked at me for a long time. His eyes were very still, the way a frozen pond is still, and I had the sudden, nauseating conviction that he could see through my skin, through my skull, into the soft grey meat of my brain, and that he was reading every thought I had ever had, every fleeting moment of frustration or weariness or despair, and weighing them against some scale I could not see. "Good," he said, and walked away. I did not feel relief. I felt nothing. I returned to my desk and continued my work, and the hours blurred together into a grey smear of parchment and ink and the smell that would not go away. They took Archivist Secundus Hallan on the third day. 2 men in black carapace armor came for him in the middle of the afternoon shift. Hallan was 60 years old, a respected scholar of tithe law, a man who had trained half the curators in the hall. He did not resist. He did not speak. He simply stood, placed his stylus neatly on his desk, and walked between them out of the hall. We did not see him again. They took Scribe Tertius Morna on the 4th day, Junior Notator Vos on the 5th, File Loader Cass and Data Curator Pell on the 6th. Each time the process was the same, the 2 armored men, the silent walk, the door closing behind them. We did not ask what they were guilty of. We did not speculate. We worked, and we waited, and we wondered if we would be next. I began to notice things, small things, the way Proctor Secundus Gellen's hands shook when he sorted requisition forms, the way Archivist Tertia Wren stared at her desk for minutes at a time without moving, the way the scratch of styluses on parchment began to sound less like work and more like the scrabbling of insects in a sealed box. I noticed that I had stopped eating. I noticed that I no longer slept properly. I would lie on my cot in the dormitory block and stare at the ceiling and listen to the breathing of the other curators around me, and I would wonder which of them were guilty, and whether guilt was something you could catch, like a disease, if you stood too close to the infected. On the 7th day, the Inquisitor summoned me to Sub-Archive Theta, the room where Velish had died. I had not been back since the cleanup. The bloodstains were still there, faint but visible, a dark outline on the floor like the shadow of a body that had been taken away. The Inquisitor stood beside one of the filing stacks, running a gloved finger along the spines of the bound ledgers. He did not look at me when I entered. "Data Curator," he said, "you have served here for 17 years. "Yes, my lord." The honorific came automatically. I did not know if it was the correct form of address. I did not care. "You are efficient. Your records are without flaw. Your superiors have noted your dedication." He pulled a ledger from the stack, opened it, flipped through the pages without reading them. "You are by every measure an exemplary servant of the Imperium." "Thank you, my lord." "Tell me," he said, and now he looked at me, and his eyes were as cold and empty as the void between stars. "Why did Proctor Velish kill himself?" I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. "I do not know, my lord. You worked beside him for 9 years. You shared meal shifts. You were assigned to the same archival section. You must have known him." "I knew him, my lord, but I did not know why Did he seem distressed, agitated? Did he speak of anything unusual?" "No, my lord. He was quiet. He performed his duties." "Everyone performs their duties," the Inquisitor said softly. until they do not. He closed the ledger and replaced it on the stack. The silence stretched. I could feel the weight of the room pressing down on me, the walls leaning inward, the air thickening until it was difficult to breathe. The smell was stronger here, old blood and incense and something else, something I could not name, something that made my throat close and my stomach twist. Proctor Velish, the Inquisitor said, discovered a discrepancy. The word hung in the air between us like a blade, a discrepancy in the agricultural tithe records from the southern continent, a small one, easily overlooked, 40 tons of grain unaccounted for over the course of 3 fiscal years. He brought this discrepancy to the attention of his immediate superior, Archivist Secundus Hallan. Hallan told him it was a clerical error. Hallan told him to file an amended report and forget about it. Velish filed the amended report, but he did not forget. The Inquisitor turned to face me fully. I forced myself to meet his gaze. I forced myself not to look away. Velish continued to investigate. He found more discrepancies, not just in the agricultural records, but in the water reclamation audits, in the industrial output logs, in the population census reports, small discrepancies, inconsistencies, gaps in the data. He found a pattern. My mouth was very dry. I swallowed. It hurt. He found, the Inquisitor said, that for the past 8 years, this archive hall has been systematically falsifying records to conceal the embezzlement of imperial resources, grain, water, ore, medical supplies, diverted to the black market, sold to off-world smugglers, and the proceeds distributed among a network of corrupt officials. 14 officials, 14 curators, scribes and archivists who betrayed their oaths and stole from the Imperium they were sworn to serve. He stepped closer. I could not move. My legs would not obey me. Proctor Velish, he said, was not one of them. But he realized, too late, that he had made himself a witness. He realized that the moment he reported his findings, he would become a target. He realized that the safest course, the only course, was silence. And the weight of that silence, the knowledge that he was complicit by inaction, broke him. So he opened his throat and bled out on this floor, and he thought that would be the end of it. The Inquisitor reached out and placed one gloved hand on my shoulder. His grip was gentle. It felt like the touch of a corpse, but it was not the end, he said, because I am here, and I will find them all. He released me, stepped back. I stood there, trembling, unable to speak, unable to think. You are not guilty, Data Curator, he said. I have examined your work. I have reviewed your financial records. I have questioned your associates. You are clean. But I tell you this so that you understand what power is. He gestured to the bloodstain on the floor. This man died because he believed that truth mattered less than survival. The 14 I am hunting believed that loyalty could be bought and sold like grain. They were wrong. Truth does not matter. Loyalty does not matter. Only power matters. The power to compel truth. The power to punish betrayal. The power to decide who lives and who dies. And to make that decision without doubt, without hesitation, without mercy. He turned toward the door, paused. That is what an Inquisitor is, he said. Not a judge, not an investigator, a force of nature, a storm that scours the corruption from the Imperium, one archive hall at a time, forever, because the work is never finished, and the guilty are never satisfied, and the rot goes deeper than you can imagine. He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I stood alone in sub-archive Theta, staring at the place where Velish had died, and I understood. By the end of the second week, all 14 had been taken. I did not know their names until afterward. Archivist Secundus Hallan, Proctor Secundus Gellan, Senior Data Curator Merrick, Junior Notator Voss, File Loader Cass, Scribe Tertius Morna, 9 others whose faces I recognized but whose names I had never bothered to learn. They were taken to the sub-levels beneath the archive, to rooms we did not know existed, and they were questioned. Some confessed immediately, some held out for days. In the end, it did not matter. The Inquisitor extracted the truth from each of them, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to extract, and then they were executed. Not publicly, not dramatically. They were simply erased, their names struck from the employment rosters, their personal effects incinerated, their desks reassigned to new curators who arrived the following week and asked no questions. The Inquisitor departed on the morning of the 16th day. He did not say goodbye. He did not issue a final pronouncement. He simply was not there anymore, and the smell went with him, and we were left with the silence. I returned to my work. I had fallen behind during the inquiry. 6 centuries of water reclamation audits still awaited cross-referencing, and the sector governor's staff had sent a follow-up request for the barley yield data. I completed the audits within the week. I filed my reports on time. My efficiency ratings remained exemplary, but I had learned something during those 16 days, something I could not unlearn no matter how hard I tried. I had learned that power was not the authority to command, or the resources to reward, or the influence to persuade. Power was the ability to reach into a room of 234 people and pluck out exactly 14, and to be right every time, and to make everyone else grateful that they had been spared. Power was the certainty that you could do this again, in another archive, another hive, another world forever, and no one would stop you because stopping you would require power of the same kind, and there was no power of the same kind except your own. I understood why Velish had killed himself. I understood why the 14 had confessed. I understood that the Inquisitor had not been conducting an inquiry at all. He had been demonstrating. He had been reminding us, reminding all of us, guilty and innocent alike, that we existed at the sufferance of forces so far beyond our comprehension that even understanding our own insignificance was a kind of presumption. We were data points in a ledger he was correcting. We were discrepancies he was resolving. We were nothing, and the terrible thing, the thing that kept me awake at night in the months and years that followed, was that I was grateful. I was grateful that he had been right. I was grateful that the 14 had been guilty, because if they had not been, if he had been wrong, then the entire structure of belief that held my life together, the belief that service mattered, that efficiency mattered, that the Imperium was just and righteous and worth the devotion I had given it, would have collapsed, and I would have had nothing left. So I chose to believe. I chose to believe that the Inquisitor had been right, that the 14 had deserved their fate, that the system was just and the rot had been excised and the work could continue. I chose to believe this even when I began to notice new discrepancies in the records, small ones, easily overlooked, 40 tons of grain unaccounted for over the course of 3 fiscal years. I noticed them, and I filed amended reports, and I did not investigate further. I served for another 23 years. I was promoted to senior archivist. I trained new curators. I maintained exemplary efficiency ratings. I told myself that I was doing good work, that I was serving the Imperium, that my devotion mattered. But I never forgot the smell, incense and formaldehyde and old blood. I never forgot the weight of the Inquisitor's hand on my shoulder, gentle as a corpse's touch. I never forgot the way he had looked at me with those cold, empty eyes and told me that truth did not matter, that loyalty did not matter, that only power mattered. And I never forgot the question he had not asked, the question that hovered in the air between us like a blade, the question I have been asking myself every day since he left. If I had been one of the 14, would I have confessed? If I had been guilty, would I have held out, knowing that he would break me eventually, that the pain would continue until I gave him what he wanted, that resistance was not just futile but meaningless? Or would I have opened my throat with a filing stylus and bled out on the floor of sub-archive theta, and hoped that oblivion would come quickly enough that I would not have to face the truth of what I had become? I do not know. I will never know. But I think about it. I think about it every time I file a report, every time I cross-reference a ledger, every time I notice a discrepancy and choose not to investigate. I think about it, and I understand that this is the real power of an Inquisitor, not the ability to punish the guilty, but the ability to make the innocent complicit in their own damnation, to make us choose again and again to look away, to file the amended report, to trust that someone else will notice, someone else will act, someone else will bear the weight of truth, and we look away. We file the reports, we trust, because the alternative is to become Velish, alone in a dark room, understanding too late that silence is a form of guilt, and guilt is a weight that will crush you if you let it. I am 74 years old now. I will retire in 6 months. I have served the administratum for 40 years, and my record is without flaw. I have trained 3 generations of data curators, and I have never once filed a report late. I have been commended for my efficiency, my dedication, my unwavering service to the Imperium. But I know the truth. I know that the discrepancies I have overlooked, the amended reports I have filed without question, the investigations I have chosen not to pursue, I know that they have cost lives, grain diverted from a starving hive sector, water stolen from a drought-stricken agri-world, medical supplies sold on the black market while plague victims died in quarantine wards. I do not know the exact numbers. I have never calculated them. I am afraid to. I tell myself that it is not my responsibility. I tell myself that I am one archivist among thousands, that my role is to maintain records, not to investigate them, that the Inquisitors exist to root out corruption and I should trust them to do their work. I tell myself this, and I know that it is a lie, and I live with the lie because the alternative is unbearable. The smell has never left. It is fainter now, so faint that most days I do not notice it, but it is there, pooled in the ventilation shafts, clinging to the walls, soaked into the stones of sub-archive theta where Velish died. Incense and formaldehyde and old blood. The smell of truth deferred, the smell of guilt acknowledged but not acted upon, the smell of power exercised from a distance, impersonal and absolute and inescapable. Sometimes, late at night, when the archive is empty and I am alone with my ledgers and my amended reports, I imagine that I hear footsteps in the corridor, slow, measured footsteps drawing closer. I imagine that the door will open, and the Inquisitor will be standing there, his face pale and narrow, his eyes the color of dirty ice, and he will look at me the way he looked at me 40 years ago, and he will say, "I am conducting an inquiry." And I will understand, finally, that I was always one of the 14, that I was guilty from the moment I chose to look away, to file the amended report, to trust that someone else would act. That the only difference between me and Archivist Secundus Hallan, between me and the others who were taken, is that I was not caught, not yet. But the Inquisitors are patient, they are thorough, they are inevitable, and the work is never finished, because the rot goes deeper than I can imagine, and I am part of it, and I have always been part of it, and no amount of efficiency or devotion or service will change that. So I wait. I complete my audits. I cross-reference my ledgers. I file my reports on time. And I tell myself that when the footsteps finally come for me, I will not resist. I will not plead. I will not try to bargain or justify or explain. I will simply stand, place my stylus neatly on my desk, and walk between the armored men out of the hall, and I will accept whatever comes next, because I will have earned it. That is what an Inquisitor is, not a judge, not an investigator, a mirror. a mirror that shows you what you have always been, and forces you to see it, and leaves you with the knowledge that you cannot unsee it, that it will follow you for the rest of your life, that every choice you make from that moment forward will be tainted by the understanding that you are complicit, that you have always been complicit, that the Imperium you serve is built on the bones of people like Velish, who could not bear the weight of silence, and people like me who can. And the worst part, the part that keeps me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the breathing of the other archivists around me, is that I do not know which of us is more guilty. The man who could not live with his silence, or the man who learned to.